The HOA president thought he had me beat. He thought his little stack of rules and fines could strip me of the only thing that brought me peace in my own home. He looked at me like I was just another pushover neighbor, someone too scared to fight back. What he didn't know, what he couldn't even imagine, was that the very chickens he wanted to ban were about to become untouchable. Untouchable in a way that would flip all his smug power right back in his face. And when I handed him the papers that made my illegal birds legally unstoppable, the look of rage and disbelief on his face was worth every sleepless night and every dollar of those bogus fines. When I first moved into the neighborhood, all I wanted was a quiet life. I wasn't looking to stir trouble or pick fights. My house had a nice little backyard, enough space for a garden and some chickens, and honestly, that was my dream. Not a loud, messy farm, just a few hens scratching in the dirt, clucking softly and giving me fresh eggs in the morning. They weren't noisy, they weren't smelly, they weren't hurting anyone. But for me, they were more than pets. I was coming out of a rough patch in life. Anxiety, stress, nights of staring at the ceiling with my chest tight and my mind racing. The chickens helped me in a way I can't even fully describe. Their routine calmed me. Collecting eggs, feeding them, watching them dust bathe under the sun. It pulled me out of my head. It made me feel grounded again. But the HOA didn't see any of that. To them, chickens didn't fit their vision of the neighborhood. The houses were cookie-cutter, the lawns manicured within an inch of their lives, and the HOA board treated the whole community like their personal kingdom. I figured they'd ignore me if I stayed quiet. I was wrong. The first notice came folded neatly into an envelope taped to my front door. Violation: non-permitted livestock on premises. Immediate removal required. My stomach dropped when I read it. My hands actually shook. I remember standing there, the evening sun fading, staring at the words over and over. Non-permitted livestock. They made my hens sound like dangerous wild animals, not the calm, feathered companions they really were. I told myself it was just a mistake. I'd explain, and they'd understand. But a week later, I got a fine in the mail, $200, and a letter that said failure to comply will result in escalating action. Escalating action. That phrase made my chest tighten. I hated confrontation. I hated the idea of being the target of these self-important people who thrived on control. Every day I checked the mailbox with dread, half expecting another fine. And sure enough, they kept coming. $200 became $300, then $500. I tried to reason with them. I emailed, politely explaining that the hens were quiet, clean, and contained in my yard. I even invited them to come see for themselves. No response. Instead, I started noticing the HOA president, a man named Richard, with slicked-back gray hair and a permanent sneer, walking past my property more often. He wouldn't look at me, just at the coop. He'd shake his head, jot something on a clipboard, and march off like he was running some military operation. Neighbors started whispering too. Some supported me, saying the hens didn't bother them at all. But others gave me that look, the one that says, "You're causing trouble." And each day, the tension built. My anxiety flared worse than ever. Every time I heard footsteps outside, I jumped, convinced it was another HOA official coming to deliver bad news. But here's the thing about anxiety. It can crush you, or it can harden you. And somewhere in that storm of dread and anger, I snapped. I was done being their punching bag. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. And I knew exactly how. See, what Richard and his cronies didn't know was that my therapist had been encouraging me to find comfort in routines, in things that reduced my anxiety, and the chickens did exactly that. They weren't just pets, they were part of my mental health care. That realization hit me like lightning. Emotional support animals. If dogs and cats could be certified, why not chickens? The next week was a blur of paperwork, appointments, and calls. I explained everything to my therapist. She listened carefully, nodded, and said, "If these hens are what help you function, then they qualify." She wrote the official letter, filled out the documentation, and, before long, I had a stack of paperwork thicker than all the fines the HOA had ever sent me. My chickens weren't just chickens anymore. They were legally recognized emotional support animals. The next HOA meeting was when everything came to a head. I walked into the bland little clubhouse, the air heavy with smugness. Richard sat at the head of the table, flanked by his board members, their faces already twisted with disapproval. He didn't waste time. "You've been fined multiple times. You're in violation. Remove the chickens immediately or we will pursue legal action." His voice dripped with satisfaction, like he was savoring the power. My hands trembled as I stood. My heart pounded in my ears, but I forced myself to look him straight in the eye. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "you can't." I pulled out the paperwork, the neatly bound packet with official seals and signatures, and slid it across the table. "These aren't just chickens. They're certified emotional support animals. Federal law protects them, which means your fines, your threats, they don't apply." The room went dead silent. Richard blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. One of the board members leaned forward, flipping through the pages with wide eyes. I swear you could feel the shift in power, like the air itself tilted. Richard's smugness cracked, and underneath it was pure fury. This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, surprising even myself. "And I did. You have no authority here. If you keep harassing me, I'll take this further. You'll be the ones in violation." For the first time, Richard had no comeback. His face turned red, his jaw clenched, and he slammed his pen down on the table. But there was nothing he could do. Legally, his hands were tied. Walking out of that clubhouse felt like floating. My knees were weak, my palms still sweaty, but inside I felt something I hadn't in months. Freedom. I had beaten them at their own game, not by breaking the rules, but by outsmarting them. My chickens were safe. My peace was intact. And Richard, he had to choke on the bitter taste of his own defeat. In the weeks that followed, the fines stopped. The notices disappeared. Richard still walked past my property sometimes, his eyes burning holes in the coop, but he never said a word. My hens clucked happily in the yard, oblivious to the war they'd just won. And me? I slept better than I had in years. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud or destructive. It's quiet. It's legal. It's in standing your ground and watching the people who tried to crush you realize they've lost every ounce of power. If this story made you smile, smash that like button and share it. Tell me in the comments, what is the most satisfying time you've seen someone beat unfair rules? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove karma always catches up.